good. It's going to suck for a little while, but it's going to be good in the end. And I think managing one sometimes is more difficult than managing 8 in the same height as Mount Everest. So you do it straight. So it took me 20 some hours.
Oh my God, so you climb up, what do you do, ride the gondola back down?
Exactly. The psychology of that is really important to realize, to have the sight in line, to know that if you bring somebody in, you need to have something in place. Like, trust yourself, go out on your own, you can do it. Yes, these people are experts, learn from them, but like you can do a good job on your own as well.
So today we have a really special guest, Dr. Nathan Coughlin. He is a world-renowned dentist, has a phenomenal YouTube page, beautiful wife, beautiful family, invests not only in his business, himself, but also invests in hard assets that's going to make him money to build generational wealth. He started off in corporate dentistry and now owns 8 clinics in Texas. So, without further ado, Dr. Nathan Coughlin. Hey everyone, so we have Nathan Coughlin here. He's a phenomenal dentist, entrepreneur, marketer, and you guys should check out his YouTube video like I just did. So Nathan, tell me a little bit more about what you do.
So yeah, I guess more specifically, I'm an orthodontist. So went to school in Los Angeles, and then from LA came to the Dallas area. Here's a little backstory, and this would be good for your physician people who are listening to this. Is both my brother and my father are physicians. My dad is a radiologist, and my brother is just a general doc. And I still remember this. Like, this is very vivid. I remember my third year of college. I took my MCATs originally. So I was originally going to become a physician. You know, I was like, hey, got to follow in Dad's footsteps. And then I took the MCAT and I was like, man, I don't know if this is for me. Like, this potentially wasn't the lifestyle I wanted. And because my dad was working, 8 to 6, and then he'd come home, have dinner for an hour, then head back out to the office. Like, he was working like crazy. Financially, it was awesome, doing really, really well. Right. But it was just insane. And I'm sure we'll talk about burnout here in a little while. And I realized, like, hey, I can't do that. That's not the lifestyle for me. So I ended up taking the DAT the following summer. And then I sat my parents down, and they weren't aware of this. And I sat them down. I'm like, hey, guys, I'm not going to do medicine. I'm going to go into dental. And you think like 99% of parents would be like, oh, that's cool. Like, dentistry, that's a great life. Like, dentists do well, And they were so disappointed.
They flipped out.
They're just like, wow, like, why? Like, I don't get it. Like, why would you do that?
Right.
But then I realized that the lifestyle for me was going to be, I think, a little bit better. Fast forward, I don't know, 20 years, and now I feel like I'm working as much as my dad. But so maybe I didn't make the right decisions. I don't know. He saw something I didn't. But so I decided to do that. Went to USC for dental and ortho, then came to Dallas, and we started up our own practice. But I know we're going to talk about burnout and how difficult it is, but when we started out in dentistry, you can basically go the private practice route or the kind of corporate route, which is similar, I think, to medicine. And when we started out in corporate, it was rough, man. Like, we were working, insane hours. I don't feel like we're getting treated that well. We didn't have enough help, like staff with assistants and front staff. And it was rough. It was really tough. And it burned us out so much that when we decided, hey, we want to open our own thing, my wife, who is a dentist, was like, she didn't want to do it. She was just like, hey, I can't, like, this is too tough already. Like, we can't do that. Plus, do dentistry plus open our own practice. But in the end, like, I felt like I could kind of see the vision. I was like, this is going to be good. It's going to suck for a little while, but it's going to be good in the end. And so when we started finally opening, it was tough. And I mean, this is like a long-winded answer of saying how I got to this point, but it was yeah, it was quite the adventure to get to this point. Fast forward, now we have I own 8 offices and things are going
Wow.
good, and I don't work as much as my dad now, so that's good on stuff I enjoy doing, stuff like this and stuff like YouTube and TikToks and all that fun stuff.
So now, how many hours are you actually working on patients right now or in the office?
So this week I'll work maybe 12 hours ish or so. So I'll work 2 days, seeing patients, and we have associates that are kind of running the other stuff. So as you know, that's obviously on patients. That's not working. No, there's a lot other stuff that's going on, but actually working on patients, yeah, 2 days a week, maybe 3, but I don't know if I could do more than that at this point.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, with 8 practices, how do you guys manage one practice as
Right.
successful as you guys are is a lot to do,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
How do you manage 8?
Yeah, I feel like people ask that. And so managing, I tell people this, I think managing 1 sometimes is more difficult than managing 8. And the reason is this is okay, say we have an assistant that calls in. So you have, say you have a small mom and pop office, and you just have two assistants, maybe 2 front staff and 2 back staff. If you have one maybe call in, it's going to be tough. 2, like you're pretty much you're out of luck if you have 2 people call in. Whereas if you have multiple offices, you have 1 or 2 or 3 people call in, not the end of the world because you can pull from different offices. So that's why I like the model of getting more offices, just because actually I think if you get your systems down correctly, I actually think it's easier and you can pull away. So if you have one, so for instance, my wife's dad is a dentist back in Los Angeles, and he has a small mom and pop office. He has maybe 1 assistant, and his wife or my wife's mom is the front staff. That's it.
Oh, wow.
So if somebody calls in, or if my wife's mom's sick or anything happens, they basically shut down. Or if you want to take a vacation, which is even worse maybe there's these physicians who are listening to this, if you take a vacation, your income goes to 0. That's it. You have nothing left,
Right.
Whereas if you have multiple locations and associates and all that stuff, you don't need to be there. I mean, you can be there and then help and make systems run, but you actually don't physically need to be there. So that's why I actually think having multiple locations and a bigger office is actually easier. It seems like it should be harder, but I actually think it's easier in the end.
It's easier. At what point did you realize you wanted multiple?
When I was 10 years old.
Oh, yeah.
I always knew that. I think it was pretty early on. I wouldn't say that young, but maybe I was definitely in residency when I knew I was not going to have just one, because it wasn't me. I can't sit still for too long. I can't be in one location for too long. And I just knew that wasn't me. But I do remember going to our first corporate location, and it was smaller at that point. I think they had 15 offices, and now they have 100 or so. They blew up. But I remember asking the owner, and we became friends. And I was like, "Hey, how?" I was in that same position. I'm like, "How did you know?" Or "How were you going to do it?" And he said the same thing. He was just like, "I knew I never wanted to just have one. I wanted to have multiple." And that was the same mindset as me. I knew after probably 6 to 8 months into our first office, it was time to start looking for another office, because I was getting antsy already. So already, I just knew, I couldn't just chill out and have one. It's not me. It's not me at all.
Yeah. Was at the beginning, was finding people difficult, or finding the right help?
100%. I think, and we're actually just talking to some friends. I mean, right now I feel like everybody's having difficulties finding amazing people. I think that's, I guess, the beauty of also having more locations and becoming a brand and all that good stuff is you have to look for people a little bit less, whereas I think people are starting to look at you somewhat. I know, as you alluded to, we have a YouTube and TikTok and all that stuff. We're by no means TikTok or YouTube famous, but we have enough views that people will start to recognize that and start to see that, and so sometimes they'll start approaching us. Actually, this past Sunday, 2 people just randomly approached me, and they're like, "Oh, I see your YouTube videos." They're in the dental field. So you start to track those type of people. So it makes it easier to attract good people. That being said, I haven't hired somebody myself in a while. We have people that are doing that.
Yeah.
And there's people that are more specialized in that and that can relate to the staff a little bit better. But yeah, I feel like the bigger your brand is, and I know we're both in a brand builder group, I think that helps, and that just makes things so much easier.
Absolutely. Now,
Yeah.
is the goal to eventually have 50 and then 100 offices? What's the goal here?
I think the goal is that it's tough because in the dental field right now, there's a lot of influx of private equity or outside funding that's coming in, not necessarily to the mom and pop offices, but to we call them the DSOs or the kind of like group locations. So that's why these people are selling out for a lot of money. So there's people who have 20, 30, 40 offices that are selling out for the hundreds of millions. So
Wow.
there's a lot of potential. I don't know how sophisticated the listeners would be, but like of times EBITDA. So if your profit, so if you have
Mm-hmm.
a good amount of profit, the companies will come in and give you multiples of those. If you're a mom
Right.
and pop office and you just have one office, that doesn't happen. That just doesn't exist. But if you have multiple offices, it does. So that is something that we're looking at in the future. I think I would go crazy. Like I think I need something to do. So if I didn't have these offices, I don't know what I'd do. I'd have to go into multifamily
Yeah.
or senior living. I don't know what I'd have to do,
You,
but
you, you
I'd
seem
always
like you
need
have a lot of
something.
energy. And
Yeah, I mean,
recently I was looking at your Facebook. I said, this guy climbed Whistler.
oh, so that's an interesting story because it's called Everesting. So you basically go you climb a hill. That particular one is Whistler. It takes like 2.5, 3 hours to climb, but you
Yeah.
climb it 8 times, which is the same height as Mount Everest. So you do it straight. So it took me 20 some hours,
Oh
and
my
you just go
God. So
up,
you climb
down,
up. What do you
up.
do? Ride the gondola back down?
Exactly. Yeah,
And
you
you
climb up
climb up again.
gondola down. Yes, they're like and go up again. You're like, what the
Oh
heck?
my gosh. You did it
Yeah.
8 times?
Yeah.
I thought it was
It's
just
pretty crazy.
once.
No, dude, like it was a lot. It was a lot. It was an amazing experience though because I try to do one kind of intense thing a year. And last year I did a marathon, which I'm not a long distance runner, so that was really tough for me. And then this year I did that, so I got to figure out what to do next year. But the marathon was intense. The marathon, it's 4 hours basically of intense. You're just trying to get through it. But this was mentally excruciating because you are just like there's no break. It's just constantly every step is an
Yeah.
elevation. So it's that for 2.5 hours ish. You grab a little bite, head back down, 2.5 hours. It was mentally challenging. It was great. I mean, it was an amazing experience, but it was tough.
Wow. Now,
Yeah,
going back
yeah,
to building the practices that you have, the 8 practices,
yeah.
what were, say, top 2 or 3 challenges that you've had as you've scaled?
Yeah, I think number one is, and I was just golfing with some friends, so this reminds me. I think you may relate to this. Is when people are a solo practitioner, right? When they're their own person, they
Right.
go, "Hey, I generate good income. I generate 6 figures, but if I take myself out of that, what's going to happen? If
Right.
I bring an associate in, what's going to happen? Like I go from making 100,000 to the office only generates a couple hundred. With all the overhead, I'm going to make like 20,000. Like how's this going to work? So the psychology of that is really important to realize, to have the sight in line, to know that if you bring somebody in, you need to have something in place. Like it's very foolish of people to bring an associate in and not be ready for that, not have more patients coming in, or not having the
Hmm.
next thing to look forward to, or some version of that. So the psychology of that, I think, was the toughest initially, because it was just, people keep talking about the golden handcuffs, especially with physicians and dentists and chiropractors and everything, right? You have these golden handcuffs because you're making good money. Why quit? Like you're doing fine.
Yeah.
Everything's
Yeah.
fine. Why change it? Like there's no reason to change.
Like life
And
is
so
good.
life is good, but it's good for now.
Right.
You say you're in your first few years, that's cool. 5 years, 10 years, okay, it's starting to get a little less fun. 15, 20, like, do you want to do this for 30 years? Like when I first started, I was early 30s. Do I want to be seeing, 70, 80 patients a day? Because that's what orthodontists are seeing, maybe more, every single
Mm.
day or 4 or 5 days a week, for 30 years? Like, no, I don't. Some people do. Like they don't want the stress of anything, and that's cool. But for me, I knew long term that wasn't going to be good. So I think seeing that vision, that's number one. Number two, the hardest thing, and this is another mental thing, was to realize that people are smart and they can help you out, but nobody cares as much as you do. And this is why I say that, because we used a marketing firm who was good. They're great. They have a lot of dental offices under their name. Very nice people. Awesome. Their performance was, it was okay, but we were doing good. The first year we did maybe like 600,000 or 700,000. Next year we're doing like 1.5 or something. It's like good. We're doing great.
Yeah.
Right? It's fine.
Yeah.
But then everything kind of petered off. And as we're trying to get more offices, we didn't have enough control. Like we wanted to make things look slightly different way. And they just wanted to kind of have a cookie cutter template. And if we want to change something, we couldn't. And so it was actually COVID was the big change for us. So, people say, hey, when you have a downtime, make that your uptime, and for us, COVID, just probably like everybody, couldn't do anything for 2 months. And so we decided that we're going to basically take over everything. We're going to take over our marketing. We're going to take over YouTube. We're going to take over Google ads. We're going to take over our website. We're everything. And so we just learned, like my wife and I just learned like crazy. So she's very artistic, so she could handle that part of it. And I'm very logical and put things and systems in place. So us combined was huge. And so just that mindset to say, hey, you know what? There are experts, and it's important to listen to them, and it's important to get their information. But you can also do this stuff yourself if you want to. Like if you have that desire, which I feel like 1% of physicians probably have that desire.
They don't even want to deal with it.
They don't want to deal. The problem is if you don't deal with it, like just pushing it away doesn't help, and that's what a lot of, my friends too, there's like, I don't want to do it. Like, I don't want to know about that. But I'm like, well, this is like your whole business. Like we have this one friend who has 5 offices. They're doing well. They've kind of, they're not as active in dentistry as they used to be, but, I was asking like, how do you know if your offices are doing well? Like what's your profit and loss statements and stuff look like? And he's like, profit and loss statements? Like, what do you mean? I'm like, your P&Ls? Like, do you not do? And he's like, no, bro, at the end of the year, we just give our accountant our credit card and tell him everything that was business related. I was like,
oh,
how is that possible? He was like, how's that possible? Like, you're not running a business. You're just like throwing stuff and hoping things work. I don't even know what are you doing here, And like they don't have that same kind of growth mindset, but yeah, like you need to take ownership of what you're doing. I think that's so important. And so many people, especially physicians and dentists, don't, because the margins are so big and they don't really need to, and they're okay. Like it's like you have those golden handcuffs and you're okay. Like it's just everything's okay, So so those two, I think those are like the biggest hurdles that we had to overcome, especially initially, and we still do now. We still go through some stuff like that.
So you do your own marketing organically and non-organically as well, like Facebook ads, Google ads, and all that?
We do literally everything. So our website's ours, blogs ours, texting service, emails, Google ads, Facebook ads, Pinterest ads. We were doing TikTok for a bit, Insta, what else? I don't know, everything. So everything is just,
wow.
I'm doing the majority of it, of the ads and all that stuff. My wife helped set up the websites. But yeah, we do legit everything. And this is the interesting thing. So you get nervous, right? So dentist goes there, hey, I've been using a marketing program for 10 years. I'm getting 1,000 people that look at my website organically a month. Hey, things are pretty good. My office is doing $1 million or whatever it's doing. And then you get nervous because you're like, oh, I think I can do better. But man, what if I switch up the website? Is everything going to go to crap? Like that's what we thought, right? We have this website that we've had for 3 or 4 or 5 years at that point. And then we're like, well, if we switch it up, like does SEO go to 0? Like how does this work? And you're not totally sure. And then once again, this is my personal opinion. I'm not an SEO expert, but we went from getting maybe 1,000 people visitors a month to close to 50,000. So the difference is insane. So it wasn't like, oh my gosh, we went down. We just skyrocketed. So and once again, we put a lot of time and effort into this. This isn't just something that we're just kind of doing on a whim. We researched it like crazy and made sure it's really nice and pretty, and there's lots of systems and stuff involved. But you just realize like, yeah, there's people who are like quote unquote SEO experts, but it's not that complicated. Like it really isn't that, it's not that complicated.
And your website's beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. And yeah, if you're a physician or something, like you're a smart person, like you can figure it out if you want to. Majority of people don't want to, so I get that. But we knew we wanted to take control, and that was the only way to do it for us.
Now, while you've been scaling this whole time, I mean, you
Mm.
scale pretty quickly. It's almost like if you're in your early 30s and you got 8 offices, every 6 to 8 months you pop up a new office almost.
Yeah,
And,
we
and
were we doing quite a bit. Yeah.
yeah, during this time, you mentioned burnout.
Mm.
Did you or your wife feel like, wow, this is crazy? Was it just at the beginning, or
Mm.
have you crossed that path as you start opening more and more offices?
Yeah. So when we first opened, of course, when you first open, you're terrified, right? You have no idea what you're doing. Like you don't know anything. Like for us in dentistry, there's claims. Like I don't know what a dental claim is. Who do you send the claim to? Like what is going on? So it's so stressful. And you try to hire these people, and they're trying to look for you to guidance, and you're looking for them for guidance, and it's tough. So I remember this. I remember this vividly. Probably like 6 months in, legitimately going to our office in our office, like going into the little doctor's office and closing the door and just staring at the wall, like literally a foot away from the wall, just staring at it for like a good 2 minutes, just being like, what the hell am I doing? Like, we don't know what we're doing. Like, what is going on? It's just, you go through those periods where you literally are just feel like you just don't know anything. And it's terrifying. It's like, it's just terrifying.
Right.
And I was mentioning off air, but that my wife went through that big time, because dentistry is tough on your body. It's tough on your psyche. And, people are constantly upset because they're in pain, and there's, you're dealing with such small little areas, and it's really tough. And yeah, she went through a big burnout, because I'm sure, like a lot of people who are listening, when you first go in, you may go in because your parents are forcing you to, or it's like the pressures of society or whatever it is. And then you get in there, and like you mentioned before, that it feels like it's like almost like a bigger prison box. You're in this prison of your office, because
Yeah.
you're not loving what you're doing. The patients are upset, and so it's tough. And then you have the stress of opening an office. So yeah, we definitely went through that. And she went through that, where she took a lot of time off of dentistry. And we're fortunate enough at that point to have associates and stuff, so it was fine. But like I said, if you're a solo practitioner by yourself, that's not really an option. Or if it is, I mean, you have to close down shop and then just go work for somebody else. So we absolutely went through that. We go through that less, very, very less now. And we have people that are there to support us, and we have an amazing team, hence why I don't have to work as much, and we can do this and all that fun stuff. But burnout's no joke. Like it's so important. There's this guy, I'm familiar with him, Jesse Itzler,
Yeah.
who is like, yeah, he's like a good motivational kind of speaker. And he has this thing called like the big ass calendar. Basically, it's a yearly calendar that you go through, and we got it just so that we could plan out the year, not because we want to plan out work by any means. We're not planning out work. We're planning out the fun events. We're saying, okay, we want to do this Whistler event. We want to go to Switzerland. We want to go to Italy. We want to go back to Canada because I'm Canadian. We want to go back home. We want to visit my wife's parents. Like all these interesting things we plan out for the year, the whole year, so that we can make sure we have these fun things to look forward to, so we can avoid burnout at all costs. Because yeah, it's a marathon. Like we're going to be doing this until our 70s, I think. So we don't want to get to that point again, for sure.
Now, when she was burnt out and, as you guys are scaling, did it ever affected your relationship?
Yeah. So if you have an office, try not to open it with your wife. Let alone a lot of offices. No. The hardest was actually initially, because we were at one office and that was it. So it's so hard even now to not bring work home. Like she's at one of the offices, she'll be home in probably a half hour or so, and I'm sure she's going to talk about something, right? So it's so hard to disassociate those two things, to be like, hey, this is our personal life and this is our office life. So one of the things that we really try to do is 7 p.m. we try to say, okay, that's it. No more office talk. Like this is now just us time. The more you can kind of cut that and make it so it's a very distinct thing, I think that has helped us a lot to not just be like constantly in it, and that would be the constant burnout. Because burnout is, I mean, we will probably all roughly enjoy doing what we're doing, but we just did it too much, like being a chiropractor, being a physician, being a dentist, whatever. They're good jobs. They're great jobs. But doing it 40 hours a week, every week for X amount of years gets tiring. And then what's even more tiring is bringing that home with you to your significant other, and then you really don't get away from it. So the more you can cut that off and give yourself some free time, and definitely not like free night times and weekends and trips and all that stuff, I think you can avoid that burnout, and just have like a great support network. I truly believe this, and I know that's why you're in this other group that we're in as well, is you are who you surround yourself with. You know, if you surround yourself with great, positive people, life is better. If you surround yourself with the people that you were hanging out with 15 years ago, 20 years ago, that are doing the same thing, exact same thing that they were doing, and their energy level is at like a 5 or a 6, and you're trying to be at a 10, I mean, it's just inevitable. And it took a while to fully understand that. I was mentioning earlier, I'm partnered with a friend of ours called Luke Wren, and that guy is like, his energy level is at like a 20 all the time, you know?
Right,
But
all the time.
All the time. And that's how he is, like literally all the time. That is him. You know, he's been here, like we spend a lot of time together, and that is his energy level. But you need to be around people like that, because it makes you realize, like, you know, sometimes you see those people and they're always happy, and you're just like, is that real? Is that true?
Yeah, like are they like that behind closed doors?
Right. And then you realize, like, hey, potentially that is true. Like, potentially there's just people who are doing life better than you. Like, it's true that happens, you know? And you want to surround yourself with people like that, not people that are, oh my gosh, they're watching the news 24/7, and they're pissed off that Elon Musk bought Twitter, and like, or, you know, all this stuff. I'm just like, I mean, we can joke about it, it's funny, but like, that's not going to consume my life, and you can't be around people that are always negative like that. And I just think that's vital to not getting burnt out, and like seeing the light and seeing the progress, you know, because Tony Robbins always says, progress is the key to happiness. I believe that, you know, if we're progressing and we're doing great things, I mean, it's hard to be upset. You're going to have your lows for sure, but in general, if you're progressing, I mean, it's beautiful.
That's how I feel as well. It's and Luke Wren, when I just came back from the Jake and Gino MM5 seminar, and Luke Wren was up there, and he's just screaming away and everything. And there were some people that didn't get it, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh yeah, man, I don't know, you know, he's like too much for me. And I tell them, I said, that's what you need more in your life. We need more of that in our lives, you know. So it's great. Yeah. How did you ever get hooked up with him? Is it because of Tony Robbins?
Yeah, so Tony has this event called Life and Wealth Mastery. It's in Fiji. And speaking of burnout, like if you're getting burned out, that is a great event to go to. Number one, if you can do it, it's in Fiji, which is pretty much the most beautiful place I've ever seen in my life. It's just unbelievable. So number one, it's a gorgeous place. Number two, you're surrounded by great people. Great energy people. And then also number three, they're talking to you about, you know, life and wealth and how to figure life out, you know. So much of energy is food, which people kind of disregard. I think especially now, I was talking to some friends, I feel like the world is sick. Like they're sick, like physically sick, you know, like eating just like the worst food for you. It's like there's very few, like there's just not much real food out there anymore. It's just,
right.
you have to, it feels like you have to spend a fortune in order to get like real food. Like you have to go to a nice restaurant, but you can do that all at home for very affordable if you wanted to. But most people don't see that. And we even try to preach that in our offices with our staff. Like we give them snacks, and we're like, hey, it can't be like a Rice Krispie treat or whatever. It has to be, you know, fruits and vegetables and stuff that's going to fuel you. Because people think like going to Chick-fil-A is healthy. And because we're in Texas, that's a big thing. And I'm like, you know, that's like very unhealthy. Like that's not good for you. That's not going to fill you up with like amazing energy, you know? So they talk about that, and they talk wealth, which I think is a very important thing. I know we're talking off air about this as well, that there's things that we think are so important and that make sense to us because it's been ingrained in us for such a long time, such as the stock market is the only way to make money, right? That's the only investment you should do is stock market. I am guilty of that. My father is big into stocks and bonds, so it's like pretty much everybody I feel like out there. And I think that's a great way to invest, one way to diversify. I don't think it's the end all be all. And they kind of mention and go into some few different alternative investments at that point. It just opens your mind up to realizing like, okay, cool. Doing these stocks and bonds, hey, that's a good idea. I think that's important. But there is alternative investments that people don't necessarily see, but definitely people in your audience are going to be, they have access to a lot of these investments that the majority of people don't. And you need to take advantage of that, especially like if you look at the stocks and bonds right now. I mean, I don't know if you have any stocks and bonds, but mine are like junk. they're worthless,
I sold all of mine, put it into multifamily.
Right. That's great. And that's amazing. And like, it's amazing that you're kind of spreading this, because it's such an important thing for people to realize that this is the illusion. The illusion is we think stocks and bonds are safe, right? Because there's your big companies, they're your Facebooks, your Googles, your whatevers. This is safe. That is an illusion. That is not true. And the reason you know this is not true is because you look at your returns in the past few years. Okay, even if you look at the returns in the past 5 years, you realize that potentially some of them are getting 2, 3, 4, 5% return. Like that's like pretty normal right now, because the stock market took such a plunge. If you look at the past, say, 5 years, if you just started investing this year, then oh, God save you, you've lost all your money. You've lost like a massive chunk of your money. So to think that stocks and bonds are safe, to think that they're safe is bananas. Like that's the opposite of safe. And I love how you're spreading this, and this is how important this is, that not only are you gaining more money with these alternative investments like multifamily, or we're doing some senior living or whatever, like something different. People want to maybe get a duplex and rent half of the house out to somebody and rent the other, and you live in the other half. Like there's all these different ways to leverage your money and use that to an advantage, and to take tax advantage of that. And that's probably something you're spreading too, is that the tax advantage. Like people don't realize how important it is. Like the worst thing you could be is a W-2 like employee, right? Because you literally get your income. You can't basically write off anything. It's the worst. But people think that, like, when we have lots of dentists that with us too, and they're like, oh, I want to be a W-2. I'm like, why would you want to be that? That's being an employee is like literally the worst thing you could be. Like you can't do any deductions. Like you have so little wiggle room. And it's the same thing with multifamily. Like you have so much wiggle room with that to break down your actual income, so you don't have to pay much more taxes, because we all know the most expensive thing in life is taxes.
Yes.
Is taxes, right?
Yes.
So, yeah.
A lot of the doctors that I talk to, they haven't heard of the term cost segregation, right?
Yes.
Is that something that you guys do with your investments with real estate?
Yeah, so I've only been a passive investor, but you're right, 100%. People do cost segregation to make deductions go quicker on the first year. And obviously, you're definitely more knowledgeable about this than me, but that it's just anything you can do to make it so that your deductions for this year, the next year, or whatever, however you're planning it, are the maximized amount possible, right? You want to pay the least amount of tax possible.
Absolutely.
So yeah, yeah, I'm like, and once again, preface this: I'm not a licensed investor or whatever the proper
right. Neither am I.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, you have to look at this. You have, like you're mentioning, you have to look at the cost segregation. How many deductions you're going to get this year? What is the maximum amount of deductions you can get over the lifetime of your investment? What are the, we were talking about this, capital events that are going to happen if you invest your money today? Does the people you want to invest with, are they planning to like hold that particular multifamily unit or those units for 20 years? Are they planning to hold it for 1 year? Or what's their disbursement amount? Once they sell it, are they just going to take everything? Or are they going to give some to the investors? Or how it works? Like there's a lot of nuances, obviously, that you have to learn. Like that's important so you don't get taken advantage of. And I think that's potentially why people get scared, because if you invest in the market, it's like, oh, here's my $1,000 or here's my $100. Mr. Market, take it. Like take it, my index fund. There's less thinking involved. But man, if this is your retirement, if this is everything you have, like if this is the last 30 years of your life, like wouldn't you want to know exactly how this is all going to pan out? And wouldn't you want to invest in something that's going to give you double digits return instead of something that's going to give you 3, 4, 5, 6, 7% and have no tax advantages? Like once you're aware of that, you just like hopefully somebody hears this and they're like, like this guy's kind of a quack, but maybe I'll look into it. Like, man, that's kind of interesting, and hopefully they'll take a little gander at it and be like, oh man, yeah, my portfolio sucks right now. Maybe I should look at something else and start learning more about it, because it's true. Like it's the future, like thinking like everybody else and investing in the market. It's just not, I don't think it's a great long-term approach. I think it's good for part of your money potentially, so you're diversified, but you need, if you're a physician, if you're a dentist, chiropractor, whatever, I think it's vital to look at other forms of investment for sure.
Absolutely. Now, looking back at what you've done since you've graduated, right? If you were to go back to when you first came out of school and write yourself something, what would be some advice, maybe one or two advice that you would give yourself from the get-go? Like, would you say, hey, would you tell other dentists, don't do corporate, come out and just open your own thing? Or don't get burnt out, have a big ass calendar, what would it be? What would a couple things be that you would tell some early young doctors?
Yeah, I've thought about this, and I know you mentioned this previously. And I think one of the big things is trust yourself earlier. And that was one thing, and that's something I still slightly struggle with. And I just was talking to a mentor of mine this weekend, and he was mentioning that too. Is people want to partner up, say with if it's the dentist, they want to partner up with multiple other dentists because they're not confident enough in their own abilities, and so they partner up because they're nervous about everything. And I think that's really important for some people, because some people are, I'd say majority of people should not own their own practice. It's way too hard. There's too many nuances. It's a different person who should be able to do it. But trusting yourself is important, and that relates to when it came to marketing, when it came to just branching off on our own, getting multiple offices. If I would have trusted myself or ourselves, actually my wife and I earlier, we would have started doing our own websites earlier. We would have started doing Google earlier. We would start doing YouTube quicker, Facebook, Insta, TikTok. Like we would have done all this stuff earlier and been in a way better position than we are right now. So for me, that's the biggest thing. And when people are talking about corporate and, oh my God, like it's a popular thing. It might be like this with chiropractors and physicians to kind of like downplay or make corporate out to be this like evil giant. And I'm the exact opposite. I think that corporate has its place 100%. Without corporate dentistry, I don't know what I would have done, because it provides a job right off the bat. It provides good income instantaneously. It gives you a ton of experience on what you should and shouldn't do. It just gets your speed up. There's so many good things about it. Yeah, you get overworked. There's lots of patients are upset because they're constantly waiting and you don't have control over a lot of things. But there's so many good things about corporate that helped me out a ton. But I'd say, like, number one, the biggest thing is just trust yourself first. That'd be like my biggest thing. Just trust yourself, go out on your own. You can do it. Yes, these people are experts, learn from them, but like you can do a good job on your own as well.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Nathan, it's been a blast talking with you. And I know there's no doubt, without a shadow of a doubt, that our listeners are going to get so much, right, from the conversation that we just had and all the tips and golden nuggets that you just threw in there. I believe you have, if someone listened to this whole thing, you have accelerated their growth hugely. Like, I wish I would have heard what you said years ago, you know? So thank you so much for being on here.
Appreciate it.
For those of you who enjoyed Dr. Nathan's episode, make sure you click one of these links below to watch some of our other phenomenal entrepreneurs episodes. We'll see you next time.